1. Introduction. So let's start with the first step in writing a book, which is deciding on your book's topic. Over time, we've become very good at both coaching authors to finish their manuscripts and also pulling out the best information and insights from their heads so their book will be impactful, especially for their specific audience. In this special report, we will outline our recommended process for how to write a book using the book writing experience we have with hundreds of authors. We gave the report a lot of thought to, so it will guide you through writing your book more smoothly and faster. We work with authors to publish their books every day. Whether the book is part of a business, leadership, or self-help series or exploring a specialty topic, we help authors get all their words written and published. 1.1. The importance of writing a book. Another great thing about writing a book comes from mastering knowledge. The process of writing about any particular topic forces you to understand whatever topic you are writing about on a deeper level. If you write fiction, you are likely to have a character somewhere in your book based on someone you have known. It gives readers a chance to share someone else's point of view, which is increasing in understanding. When you write, you are offering a part of you through your experience and viewpoint. It's far less embarrassing to have newly acquired information incorporated into a book, arrived at after deep reflection and consideration. There are so many reasons to want to write a book. You're not alone in wanting to become an author. Writing a book has gone beyond becoming a piece of the elite. After all, one of the primary reasons more people don't write books is because they seem like a lot of work. You might be at point B moving on to point C. Writing down your experiences, perceptions, ideas, and even fictional stories builds up a memoir, a piece of you. Although writing a book may seem like it involves putting your life, contributing your thoughts to the world, there is a tremendous satisfaction that comes from writing from the ground up. 1.2. Benefits of being an author. Being an author can also be quite profitable, if you're prepared to consider your book as a business. Wealth is certainly not going to happen simply because you wrote a book, despite yesterday's promises from the book publishing horse, with desire to sign with or without your book proposal. Nonetheless, the hardest part of being an author is marketing your product, so you might as well be prepared. Remember that Hollywood needs scripts, Wall Street needs books, and agents and publishers are constantly searching for fresh voices. Given this is a world of mediocrity and hype, quality rises quickly. Individuals of distinction are rightfully recognized and rewarded with worthwhile contracts and agreements. Many freelance writers supplement their income with their books. And of course, the more knowledge the writer possesses about marketing, which is simply the art of satisfying others' needs, the more worth it his products will be. Besides a serious amount of good karma, writing a book is a creative outlet that can be extremely satisfying. It also makes you an author. A book, an essay, a blog, even a vision or a business plan, it doesn't matter. If you wrote it, you're an author. And if you know something that others don't know, and that you can support financially by providing draw from your passion and unique nature, those people are your readers. That's exciting. When your readers connect with you on an emotional level that generates some sort of response, which can include encouragement, support to buy your stuff, or even criticism, they become your first fans. How fulfilling is it to do what you love, help people, and create die-hard fans? 1.3. Overview of the writing process. Various perceptions of the place of the writer, including connected material that can help guide your writing and align your story. Book writing software phrasing reveals more about you and your pleasant prospects toward book ownership, more than the tools you use to write a book. If you invest in a clear understanding of your writing style before you write about anything, you will be able to accomplish more while benefiting with increased respect and value with everybody involved in your book project. A book writing software package can help you make sense of what you're doing and tie your advancing intentions to appropriate publishing talent. Your book writing software must add another layer of respect and appreciation to every effort you make to enhance your title. Writing on your own discipline's rejections or suggesting new writing methods might also offer opportunities to build credibility. Overview of the writing process. Before you can start writing incredible content, you will need at least an intermediate understanding of the basic principles of writing. The key to getting started before you have anything to write about is to write. Whether you write in a journal, blog, or other medium, writing can help you make sense of pain, find happiness, and solve problems. Smart people write down the answers to whatever puzzle is spinning around in their mind, and then they start writing about it. Items you'd want to write before you start putting your thoughts on pages might include querying the publisher, mapping out the book using sticky notes, or reverse engineering an already published item. There are at least a dozen different book writing software programs, ranging from free to hundreds of dollars. Subjects connecting websites include specialty companies where you can answer as few as 10 questions about the book that you want to publish, along with 5 strategic next actions. Products typically come with pricing plans that make book writing software ubiquitous. Introduction: flex your writing muscle. Getting started. Once you have a book deal, you may also have a contract that specifies deadlines for presenting your publisher with different parts of your manuscript. These deadlines can be great motivators for your writing. If they are not, and if you don't need an advance to support writing your book, then it's best to draft the whole book before you start selling it. Otherwise, you'll resent the time spent writing the proposal that really should have been spent writing the book itself. The useful rules to remember are: if you're writing non-fiction, draft the whole book first. If you're writing fiction, write the whole book, but take your time in the beginning and get feedback on either the idea or the first few chapters. Then keep going. If you're writing for young people, write the whole book and take into account notes on voice or style. If you really know what you're doing, if you're writing a very long book, if you have contractual obligations to submit partial manuscripts by certain deadlines, or if you're on a deadline to submit to a competition, start with a proposal or partial manuscript for the early phases, then finish the entire draft. Okay, you're ready to start writing a book. Here's a guide to the process. Writing a book can be a long process, but don't be intimidated. Even new authors often have great success and sell big in the self-help or fiction genres. Self-help and fiction books are easiest to sell to traditional publishers, and for those, you must generally write an entire manuscript before contacting a publisher. Additionally, you'll benefit from the support of a literary agent, and will need a good query letter to land an agent. For a non-fiction book, however, you may be able to sell the book first, especially if you're an established specialist in your field. Most non-fiction books are sold on the basis of a book proposal, often with 1 or 2 sample chapters that show the publisher the style of your writing. 2.1. Finding your writing inspiration. Challenge. A writer is given a challenge, which could be physical, emotional, or spiritual. Writing can be your response to someone else's challenge, a debate, or a dare. Reading. Have you ever read a book that was about you? Writers are often readers first. You could be inspired by another writer's book to write about your own experiences. Championing. You may be inspired by a person you love, admire, or respect, like yourself. Your loved one's encouragement can push you onto your book writing path. There's no magical way you'll get to a place in life where you want to write. But in all likelihood, this desire will hit you due to a variety of influences. Here are the major ones you should watch for. 2.2. Setting clear writing goals. There's no one right goal for a manuscript. Your goal is just another tool to help you identify where you fit into the process. You'll find in this challenging work it's essential to check in with your goals every now and then and ask, is this still what I want? All goals are equal in the eyes of your manuscript. No goal is intrinsically better than any other goal. There are different ways to approach your book to be able to help you reach your personal goals. Reach your goals. What good are goals if they can't be reached? Now it's time to get clear about your goals. Are you writing just for fun? Want to focus on a small niche to share your expertise? Desire to become techie, to be well known and make money by launching several books? Or want to write a major book for a major publisher and win a literary prize? All of these goals are totally appropriate and can be equally well crafted into a successful manuscript. 2.3. Creating a writing schedule. To make sure your book writing process lasts and is effective, consider the following rules about your writing schedule. Choose a reasonable writing schedule. Before you start your book writing process, appoint a regular time period for writing your book and make sure you can stick to this schedule most of the time. Write every day at the same time. Choose a writing spot and stick to it. Start with a small goal of 30 minutes. Track your progress. Always stay accountable. If your schedule allows it, accountability partners can keep you from backing out. Make your deadlines. Make a good effort to stick with your schedule, keep the time you've committed to writing, and meet your writing milestones. Your writing schedule matters most during the start of the book writing process. You might be feeling excited and ready to write, and if you suddenly get too busy or lose your rhythm and motivation, that initial excitement can disappear. It's imperative to jumpstart your book writing process with a schedule that will last and work for you. Crafting your book idea. Writing a non-fiction book proposal, like any other business proposal, is a competitive, time-consuming process that can require authors to pull out all the stops to get noticed by the right people. If you have a killer book idea, get prepared. Write a convincing proposal that instantly connects with whoever reads it. The purpose of a book proposal is to provide an introduction to the author and their book. It is only one step in the methodology that must be undertaken. Understanding this is essential. The book is backed by a well-thought-out proposal. Although many books do not require the extensive preparation that these proposal submissions require, they are necessary for a professional presentation. Fully outlining the manuscript is beneficial for tracking important points made in key chapters of the plot. Share your expertise. You already have your book idea, right? Then writing is simple once you let your imagination run wild. You can start anywhere and write whatever you want in any given chapter. So let's move on from topic ideas and delve into the next big step in the process, crafting your book idea. 3.1. Developing a compelling premise. So, what does it take to develop a memorable, timeless book? First, it must have a compelling premise or core. Examine some classic stories and examine their basic core and how the theme was developed. Perhaps there are only a few basic themes, but those themes present an unlimited number of possible variations. A timeless theme will have three critical factors. The hero must have a weakness that will make him likable. He confronts an adversary who is likable. The hero must overcome his weakness if he is to defeat his adversary. This list is obviously simplified, but any timeless piece of literature will include these elements. These ideas will be explored more deeply elsewhere. The first key to writing a book is to develop the idea of your book and the plot elements. Think of some memorable books that never left your mind. There is something to learn from each of them. The concept of a book evolving is similar to the evolution of a tiny acorn, first into a sapling, and in time, becoming a magnificent oak tree. It is an organic process of growth and development. A powerful vision is critical for a writer's success. Although the writer may not succeed, the goal of producing such lasting beauty elevates the spirit. 3.2. Creating memorable characters. For the explorers, writers who can identify more with the mechanics than the overall picture, it might be easiest to approach character creation by completing comprehensive character profiles. Many good online resources can help you flesh out the process, but I have personally found it to be useful to answer the following questions on anyone who's anyone in your story. When readers pick up a book, they're not just reading about things happening to the character. They are reading about who the character is as a person, about what's happening inside their very soul. It's a big job, but characters are the cornerstone of any successful story. A memorable character, someone we either deeply love or deeply hate, but either way someone we can't forget, is a hallmark of a great book. And in order to craft a great character, you have to know a great deal about who your character is, or at least who they were before your story began. This might sound easy, after all you can close your eyes and see them, right? But the true story benefits from probing deep inside their closets and inside the hidden nooks and crannies of their motivation, the concept that drives them forward toward their ultimate destiny in your story. 3.3. Building a strong plot structure. Here's an analogy. A new band may not have deep commercial song material, but a lack of deep commercial songs won't be what keeps them from being signed. Bands are usually rejected for less dire reasons. They don't sound good, they're not ready, the songs all sound the same. The reason CDs are accepted or rejected by the public is their song material and the quality of that material. Bands that are accepted have both. The same is true with novels. The difference is that songs are not as simple or easy to fix as plot. A good plot is really a simple thing. The novel structure that truly matters most to agents and editors is plot, or the first 4 questions in the subjective elements checklist. What happens if a novel structurally lacks something, and yet possesses a strong plot? What if, in the editing process, I determine that the novel does indeed have structural flaws, and I discover the answer is one of the rest of the plot elements? Most novels that fail do so at the premise, character, theme, or through-line level. They have serious flaws at these deep structural layers. It's more common for a published novel to suffer from superficial problems like list stuck or whittling warts than serious plot-level flaws. Why? Most published novels possess a strong plot structure. That's why they were published. But a simple lack of plot structure doesn't cause a novel to be rejected, only to wallow at the query stage. Research and planning. After you've done your research, it's a good idea to create an outline. Once you have an outline, it will be easier to quickly craft a work around your creative decisions because you've already made them. It's a bit of security to fall back on when the going gets rough. Remember that you're not wed to your first outline. Consider it a tool to help you frame your decisions, a guide to keep you on the path rather than the path itself. You may find yourself needing to deviate time and again, but at least your map is there. It's information overload, but using tools like character sheets, timelines, and extended plot beats will save you headaches later on. These may feel like stalling tactics at the moment of waiting real work, but they're just as crucial. What's the sense in being your work forward if you're only going to trip yourself up? Your effort to stay organized will pay off. In the early stages of writing a book, it's particularly important to get your research and organization right. Without knowing what you're dealing with, it's difficult to execute it well. Therefore, make sure you understand what kind of book you are writing, say a memoir, an academic work, or a novel, and what constraints your genre will place on it. Do your research when it comes to the action of your book, the setting, the time, the language, the behaviors, etc. Don't skimp. Your readers will pick up on your reluctance or inability to flesh out key parts of this world. 4.1. Conducting thorough research. Of course, there's no way of knowing a theme before starting to write, as it's what comes naturally. It's inspired things. Ideas that stem from personal anecdotes, projects that the author is working on, commentaries about the world around them. However, going to a search engine and checking the first few results, whether or not any sites are actually bookmarked, can contribute a lot to the way an idea is worth pursuing. While searching, the sense of fulfillment that comes from finishing a project will grow as a product. While good ideas should be the only reason that a project should be pursued, backing things up sometimes does create an extra spiritual momentum that gives any great writing project a lot more fire and value. When writing a non-fiction book, the majority of its content is information and advice. How do you know the knowledge and advice you're providing is accurate if you're not well versed with what you are covering? Of course, a considerable portion of any information in any book should be personal anecdotes or stories about the author, but putting in some background and fact-checking certainly can't hurt anyone, can it? This is something that cannot be done through popular opinion or popularity itself. Otherwise, books and articles about the most far-fetched ideas would be the most intellectual pieces of writing in library collections. It's sheer statistics and facts that people are drawn towards if they want to know something. 4.2. Outlining your book. The outline is where we take care of the foundation work before we put up the framing and cover the house. Many writers will tell you that once you're ready to put words on the paper and type on your keyboard, the outline drives everything about your writing process from here on out. You will be stretched out on a mental rack throughout the process, under tension to make sure what you write stays true to your story structure. It's worth it because when applying systematic outlining, you can write upwards of 2,700 words in a 45-minute session, with an average word count of 99,000 words in under 8 weeks once the 5-act structure has been established. If you're anything like me, your writing really begins before you start putting words down on paper. It begins with ideas in your head. Planning your book is essential. It's a huge time saver. Catch a vision for what your book will be about. You need to know before you start your publisher's descriptor. This is crucial because every word you write and every breath you take needs to lead back to that central theme. Once you get started on the specifics of your story's key events, you need to know what direction you're heading in. 4.3. Creating a writing environment. If you feel more comfortable writing in a hotel room or in a new city, change your environment. If you have a full or part-time job and a family, you will have to work more diligently at carving out the time you need. Too many potential writers make excuses. They think they do not have time to write, or they are not in the right place to find creative inspiration. The fact is that personal motivation is the driving force. Any emotional traumas or alterations in your standard pattern of writing behavior will have some effect on your style. In reality, preparing to write may be more demanding than the writing itself. Make sure that you are ready to get started, and that you are interested enough in the process to sustain you for the length of your work, which may take a year or more. See yourself as a coach and organizer, rather than a writer. You are setting up an environment which fosters writing by providing special time, space, materials, and attitudes. Diligent preparation is key to producing a good product. Writing techniques. Something that many aspiring writers overlook is the fact that you can learn a lot about the craft of writing simply by looking over and analyzing some of your favorite books. What techniques does the author use in order to create a certain atmosphere? What successful structural and character techniques have been used in the book? The intelligent answer to these questions may well be the answer to your entire book writing problem. One of the primary pieces of advice for anyone wishing to develop their skills as a writer is to read. Do not only read books within your chosen genre, read books of all kinds. This exposure to many different writing styles invariably helps writers to develop their own unique voices, and hopefully equips them with the necessary skills and vocabulary to produce a high standard of writing. Within a more immediate context, reading a chapter of a good quality book before you take up your own pen can be a great way to set you in the right mood for writing. 5.1. Overcoming writer's block. One of the best ways of subverting writer's block is to fight fire with fire, sample some of the best in-quality books available on the market, and do some brainstorming around their characters, their writing style, the writing voices that they display when narrating, the universes that they navigate, the way their characters relate to one another, and so on. Prompts abound for these themes, so feel free to use the process that works better for you. Writer's block. 2 relatively innocent words that tell most authors that they will never be able to produce a single word for their novel or any other creative writing piece, right? Wrong. There's absolutely nothing to these words except what you make them be. There are many myths about writer's block, such as that it's some sort of dramatic, paranormal phenomenon that only affects blocked authors, when it's actually simpler and more mundane. Writers' lack of inspiration can be caused by lots of factors, such as lack of interest, lack of time, a stressful lifestyle, problems with the technological part of writing, for example with setting up a blog or website if you're publishing by yourself, but ultimately all it takes to muddle it through is a dose of self-discipline and commitment to put some effort into the project, a bit of thinking about the ease of feeling the point of being an author or a blogger, and the process offers an escape comfort zone for many introverts as well. 5.2. Finding your writing voice. Your writing voice is essentially your primal writing muscle's best work. It is the essence of your stories, the life in your characters. It is the foundation of a unique and distinct writer's hand, influencing both form as well as content. An author's writing voice is a deeply personal and intimate form of artistic expression, and to be successful, it is critical writers cultivate an interest in self-discovery through honest emotional writing. You cannot possibly write something emotionally magical unless you first understand what neatly bottled feelings are, nor how to drink from that bottle at the drop of a hat. Nor can you give of yourself freely, year in year out, unless you possess an innate passion for and belief in your causes. Once a writer can express themselves clearly through their ability to utilize their whole self fairly effortlessly, then everything, from initial manuscript draft to polish and lens, becomes a matter of mimicking the desired result, after which consistent results can be expected through time, experience, or focused practice. Don't worry too much if you feel like you don't know what kind of writer you are. Most professional writers tend to start writing with a general idea of what type of books they'd like to write, and then continue refining their writing voice over the years through practice, research, study, and reading other authors' books while looking for inspiration. 5.3. Editing and revising your work. Once you're confident that both your ideas and their expression are polished, and your overall book is as good as you can make it, share your work with others to help identify areas that need further work. Getting another point of view on your ideas will help you to improve the direction and overall message of your book, allowing you to speak effectively to your audience. After your edits, you deserve another treat. Collect feedback and make final changes. You're ready to finalize and conquer, knowing that you've taken your ideas from blank page to hopefully best-selling book. Wahoo! All other steps of the process, such as book cover design, marketing, and distribution, should take place once you've written and revised the manuscript, not before. Editing and revising your work are critical to the book writing process. Start by going over your work with a critical eye and red pen, making notes on what you need to fix, chop, or improve. You may even want to stop and fix the capitalization, spelling, or grammar errors. You'll refer to this list as you work on your second draft. Revise to clarify, condense, and ensure that your overall organization is at its best. Then, leave your book alone for a couple of weeks to gain distance and perspective. Come back and do it all over again. Step away, then revise again to critique from a fresh perspective. Publishing options. Be honest and realistic with yourself about what you want from your book. This is the only way to ensure you're not overspending your budget or taxing your resources. And the time to think about this isn't as you're knee-deep in book production, so if you can, take the time to consider all of your publishing options before moving forward. Choose the best publishing option for you before you begin the step-by-step process of self-publishing a book. Take some time to think about your goals and how the many book publishing options fit into your plan. Consider your budget, your time and resources, and your audience. Are you setting out to tackle a massive undertaking and see a book through to completion, or do you have loose and/or modest expectations? Are you interested in getting your book into the hands of the most readers possible, or do you plan to write something that only needs to exist at all? 6.1. Traditional publishing versus self-publishing. Traditional publishing. Traditional publishing is the most difficult route to getting your book published. You will need a book proposal to get your book considered for traditional publishing. Most publishing houses, like Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster, require a literary agent to submit your proposal for you. Once your proposal is accepted, the publishing house will market, distribute, and promote your book, ideally with a gift of an advance on sales against future royalties. However, you won't have much control over when or how your book is published, cover design, or sales margins. The good news is that after your book is published, you can pursue speaking engagements or other deals to sell more books. If you don't score an offer, you can still make your dreams of becoming an author come true. It's time to make the big decision. Will you pursue getting traditionally published, or will you decide to self-publish the book? Weigh the pros and cons of traditional versus self-publishing, keeping in mind that it's getting harder and harder to score a traditional book contract. There are upsides to both of these types of publishing, which include the following. 6.2. Finding a literary agent. Many literary agents have worked in the publishing industry, bringing a wealth of experience to the table. Plus, they have many personal contacts and can often get things done more easily than a writer going it alone. Another benefit of working with a literary agent is that they can be the bad guy. Every author has periods of insecurity, frustration, or fear, and agents can often successfully speak up when authors can't. However, access to their contacts, experience, and ability to act as a buffer comes at a price. They'll take a cut of any advances, royalties, or publishing contracts. Yet this is usually worth the peace of mind and opportunities that a literary agent provides. The risk to the writer is greatly diminished, and their costs are usually much more than covered. If you want to publish your book with a traditional publisher, you'll probably have to work with a literary agent. They're essentially a gatekeeper. A good literary agent will take you seriously and help you polish your proposal, assisting you with your book's concept, marketing, and other important characteristics. They'll offer directions and support, while also presenting both the project and the writer in the best light possible. Once this is done, they'll act as a salesperson, marketing your proposal to as many publishers as possible to get the best deal. Most large publishers don't accept unsolicited manuscripts, so it's impossible to submit your proposal directly, making their agents even more essential. 6.3. Understanding the publishing process. So how do you get started, or simply what do you do if you've written a book? Of course, the first step is to write a book, which is a monumental task on its own. But what about actually getting published, and the rest of the process? How and where do you start? This article offers information on how you, as an author, could get your book published through the traditional route, in a way that is understandable and up to date. Differences between publishers. Types of publishers. Self-publishing. Literary agents. Should authors contact multiple literary agents at once? The query letter process. Submitting to a traditional publisher. Royalties and payments. Author's fair share. Is self-publishing right for you? Financial considerations. The pitfalls of using your own words for your book. The book proposal. Understandably, understanding the publishing process is confusing, especially if you're writing your first book. Are you supposed to start writing? Do you need to approach a publisher? Some writers focus less on understanding the publishing process, not wanting to be distracted with the technical. However, I don't think this is a very good approach. Understanding the publishing process could actually help you as a writer. When new writers understand the procedures, they can plan with a focused path and vision. Building your author platform. Although it is a good idea for a first-time author to have an author platform, it does not have to be simply based on selling books. An effective author platform shows that you can communicate your message to a large group of people. And good ways to do that are through social media and blogging. When you have a blog with readers, you will have a built-in audience for your book. Your blog can actually be the tool you use to publish your book in the first place. In this non-fiction market, ebooks are growing in popularity, so you could actually publish your manuscript on your blog. Then when it comes time to publish your manuscript, you already have a built-in audience. And your blog could be your first book proposal. Yes, I said it, your proposal could already be written and ready to go. You can simply download your blog and use it as a sample of your writing. You can also show a potential publisher the number of people reading your blog. In some cases, you may be able to show a successful advertising stream, so everyone will understand how you can transfer blog readers to book buyers. One of the most important elements of your book proposal is your author platform. Your author platform is simply the number of people you are reaching with your message. This is the number of people who are reading your blog, following you on Twitter, and are Facebook fans. It is the current number of people on your email list and your level of influence on social media. Your author platform is important because publishers realize that you cannot rely only on book sales to make your book successful. You need an established community of people ready and willing to buy your book. 7.1. Creating an author website. A favicon is a little symbol that shows up on the browser tab bookmark list and history of sites. It's a branding element. Icons are typically created in a square format. Geometrically, they present best that way. To make a favicon for your website, create a 16px square image of your author logo or graphic, and find an online favicon generator. If you don't already have a logo or design for your author identity, you might first want to create that in a variety of square sizes, then use the favicon generator. Hosting and domain name, navigation, homepage, about page, book page, goodies for readers, blog resources, contact page, shopping cart, social proof, privacy policy, favicon, essential security measures. In today's digital world, every author should plan to create a website. Whether you aim to publish your book independently, are seeking a traditional publisher, or hope to attract readers and speaking opportunities, having a professional website is invaluable. The following are key decisions and tasks to consider as you create your author website. 7.2. Engaging on social media. Many authors find themselves almost immediately overwhelmed by the idea of promoting their book, and the reality of their limited time and capacity to do so. To avoid this, and to set both yourself and the book up for success, we recommend beginning to build your platform early in the publishing process. We've outlined some broad approaches here that can apply to a range of different author types and books. You may need to tailor these to suit your book and unique authorial qualities. If your own preferences aren't represented here, we encourage you to consider which other areas of expertise you command, or things you are genuinely interested in having a go at, and working out how they can fit a strategy for success. The most effective way to connect with people as an author is to find the unique voice that resonates with you. The aim is to provide information, inspiration and resources and materials that support conversations and connections. Successful authors converse with their readers on subjects they care about beyond their books. 7.3. Networking with other authors. Perhaps most importantly, by networking either online or in person, you'll learn various aspects of the business side of writing and publishing that you might not otherwise understand. This will be beneficial for you to know whether you self-publish or go the traditional route. Writers develop a sense of community. It's a give-and-take relationship where they share information, writing tips, editing tips, the latest news on publishing trends and a whole lot more. In return, writers provide support and feedback. This writing life is tough. It helps to have someone who understands your frustrations and disappointments. First-time writers sometimes decide that networking with other writers and authors is something they'll only do after they've achieved success. You don't have to do that, and I suggest you don't. Get to know other writers, whether they're beginners, mid-listers, or are enjoying bestseller status. Romance writers in particular are extremely friendly and supportive. Attend writers' conferences, conventions, and other author and writers' gatherings. Even if you can only manage a couple of online forums and communities, that's a good start. If you can find local events, such as an in-person meetup for genre writers in your area, you may also make friends and writing support. Marketing and promotion. I'm in total agreement. Whether or not you're sure exactly who you're reaching with your book, see the section on the professional proposal and the book target audience in Part 2, you can still start developing an author brand. If you can pay for everything, you'll save time and hassle, and might begin to recoup some of your costs you invested. If you can't afford a budget at all, you'll simply invest time. Lucky you that we writers tend to have more time than money. Book fairs, trade shows and book expos are perfect places for authors and publishers to network. Do you have an idea for a promotional item? Hand out cards with your book cover on the front and your contact information on the back. Mousepads make wonderful and useful collateral. Tablet and smartphone cases are wonderful gifts. No author likes to hear this, but just like any other industry, publishing is a business. Bookstores, wholesalers, and distributors are in it to make money. If your book doesn't make back the advance the publisher pays you, or if they invest minimal money in you, the book will receive very little shelf space. A small press book could have better distribution options, but you still have a lot of work to do that cuts into your writing time. What if you're a DIY kind of person? Great. There's nothing smarter than creating a fan base. A writer no longer has the luxury of writing a great book and then going to a cottage in Italy to wait for the royalty checks to arrive. If you are like many of the people I know, you might dream of a smaller yet active fan base. It means you can get to know your fans by name and address. They'd attend book signings and do that other free and persuasive job of word-of-mouth advertising. 8.1. Developing a marketing plan. Your book proposal can be a good place to start your marketing plan. Anyone who is going to invest time, energy, and/or money in your project will be interested in this aspect. For the publisher, especially the self-publishing author, an effective marketing plan is the most important part of the proposal. If you're proposing a series, your plan has to include not just the first book in the series but the number of subsequent books you're planning and your marketing plans for all of those books. They will want to know your targeted market and how you plan to reach them. They'll want to know your strengths in creating marketing opportunities. Everything from your web persona to live public events to media is important. Have you written reviews or other articles about your subject or genre? You need to document all of these things for your publisher to be. While you're writing your book, the next biggest aspect of selling it is developing a marketing plan. A traditional publisher will want to know your plans for book marketing, and this is an area of the writer's job that is ever increasing. Long before you're ready to publish, you have to have a plan, and you have to begin to carry it out. The group authorsguild.org is a good resource for this aspect of being a self-employed author. You have to treat your writing career as a business, and marketing is a piece of that business. Every business has a marketing plan. 8.2. Book launch strategies. Set up a launch team. Your launch team is a group of people who are committed to helping you get the word out about your book. Your role in this process is to make this process as easy and as clear as possible. Keep an open door. Share the process, the good, bad, and the ugly as well along the way. At the end of the day, you're the quarterback of your own launch. Well, it's your launch. Make it about your readers. This isn't about you. It's about your readers. An old saying goes, you have to write what you want to read. Writing your book is just the very beginning. When you're planning your launch, the earlier you start thinking about it, the better. A good idea is asking people to buy and review your book before the launch. Emphasize the feedback element. If they hate it, you want to know. If you are taking feedback on any last-minute changes, be specific about the deadlines or it could spiral out of control. 8.3. Utilizing book reviews. The above explains the sales and promotional benefit of having an existing collection of book reviews, but keep in mind that each review also acts as yet another keywords bridge to readers who might be interested in learning more about the book's contents. It's likely that some of your reviews will point out specific features of the content that you might not have thought were distinct selling points. So, rather than forgetting to mention these aspects which were considered significant by readers themselves, instead integrate them in your future list-oriented book promotions and sales materials. Also, if possible, the highlighting of specific reviews' relevant features can be mentioned within the sales materials themselves, such as the book's Amazon and Goodreads page, a newsletter or email blurbs, or even relevant book material directly. Reviews are key to maintaining your ongoing book marketing efforts. They serve as a critical nudge for readers to take action. If someone unfamiliar with the book sees overwhelming consensus that it's worth reading, they're more likely to buy a copy. After all, the reader doesn't know everyone personally, so they are relying on the feedback of those who've already read and fully vetted the book. Not only does that social reinforcement now act as a deciding factor in purchasing the book, but it also guarantees a better reading experience than they might have otherwise had, leading to more positive reviews about the memoir in turn. Beyond influencing potential new readers, a lot of other sales opportunities can be directly tied back to the fact of having already received good reviews from those who already read the book. Building a writing routine. While one page a day won't seem unfeasible, although it may do so on a particularly bad day, 100 pages within the space of a month seems huge. Writing 3,000 words a day is equivalent to typing around 15 pages. This may seem a lot, but remember our goal, finishing a book within the space of 52 weeks. This goal is much more manageable when your focus is smaller and the impact added up. We've talked about time management, and why you shouldn't worry about finding as much time to write as our culture suggests you secure. We've also looked at allowing a little time in your day to let your mind wander. But here we're emphasizing one key idea: writing daily is the most effective way to complete a project. If you want to complete a novel in the next decade, the best way to do it is through daily writing. Little by little, day by day, the words will mount up. Remember, if you write just 1 page a day, you will have written more than 365 pages of your book in a year, enough to finish even a 1,000-page novel. 1 page a day in a year won't seem so daunting, will it? 9.1. Establishing daily writing habits. Many successful writers possess the amazing capacity of being able to work, at least a little, even when their muse is on vacation. Every time you give in to the temptation of not writing, let it be known that you are making it more painfully difficult to begin your writing work the next time. When you study the daily schedule of an experienced writer, you will see that they are always writing or thinking about writing. They do this whether they have any internal motivation to write or not. Just because you do not want to work on your book, does not mean you can't work on it. Refusing to write until your muse gives you the go-ahead is not going to work for you in the long run. At some point you must get words on the page whether or not you feel like it. Most writers don't have an issue with motivation, but discipline, which can be challenging, especially in the early writing years. Every writer writes at a different pace and on different days. While it is absolutely okay to allow yourself some freedom, especially on the weekend, do your best to establish some kind of pattern in writing. The key is consistency, to not have too much time between putting pen to paper. If you can, establish daily writing habits. Sure, you probably have days where you really just don't want to write, but discipline doesn't mean quitting. It means writing that sentence you hate, if that is all that is possible that day. 9.2. Setting realistic writing goals. Rachel Thompson told us in our podcast episode on how to set realistic writing goals. Break the process down and set small, accomplishable goals that keep you motivated throughout the entire writing project. If you set realistic writing goals, you will be able to celebrate when you reach them, instead of being disappointed that you've failed to reach an unrealistic, intimidating, and far-off dream. Celebrate your milestones and reward yourself when you've made progress. It will keep you motivated and help you to keep going. Everyone's goal will be different. Some people plan to write their book in 30 days at the fastest possible speed, while others are happy if they write a few hundred words each day. It doesn't matter. Your goal is your own and unique to you. All that matters is that you have a meaningful target and that you have to stick to it. Unfortunately, most people struggle to set realistic writing goals. They tend to discredit their own efforts and choose far too monolithic and unrealistic goals. That's why it's crucial that you're taking your time when figuring out the right amount of time for you. 9.3. Maintaining consistency. It's a question of creating those rules for yourself and then obeying them. If a character is missing from a scene, there should be a good story reason for it. If you describe a room in one way at the beginning of a novel, it should look the same at the end of the story, unless you have a good reason for changing it. Creating those rules and then obeying them can sound like hard work, or might come close to sucking all the joy out of writing for other people. But creating those rules can be healthy and liberating. It doesn't all have to happen at once for a start. Create a rule, stick with it. Add another rule, and stick with that. The result is something that can enfold you even while there's no escape for your characters. Use your rules to control characters' movements swiftly and cleanly. You can then sit back and bask in that control, your world's more believable and your people more real. Consistency in a manuscript is essential in creating a world that feels real to readers. It's also a sign of respect for your readers. They're trusting you to create real people in a real place, and to tell them a story that obeys its own rules. Flouting the rules or forgetting about certain characters or plot threads until the very end will make some readers feel that they've been tricked. Staying motivated. You can also keep yourself motivated by breaking your project down into smaller, manageable steps. When you look at an entire book, the idea of writing it can feel overwhelming. But if you look at writing a single chapter or a handful of pages, it's much more digestible. So sit down and see if you can break your book into smaller steps, such as all the chapters and then each section within the chapters. If you realize that you only need to write a few paragraphs or work on one small part, that can definitely light some motivational fire. Nobody else is going to write this book for you. So it's up to you to be motivated, to be your own cheerleading team. There will definitely be times you don't feel like writing your book. Every writer has been there. But here's the great thing, just get started. You don't have to feel like writing to start putting words on the page. Just get started. In 5 minutes, you'll likely find that you feel like writing after all and that you can keep going. And even if you stop after 5 minutes, you've made 5 minutes of progress. That's nothing to scoff at. 10.1. Celebrating small wins. Often the hardest part of writing is writing itself. It's necessary to do the work and catch a glimpse of your best words in motion. Small frequent doses of writing can fortify your frame. Celebrating small wins each day reassures you that you are making steady forward progress. This feeling can lead to much greater success and make the creative journey far more enjoyable. Set the bar for success low and above all consistent. But sustained efforts follow a chain of more modest accomplishments. The first writing routine involves less work than the final product and offers more immediate feedback. When the stakes are lower, the weight of anxiety lifts, perfect silence is no longer a requirement, and the energy between you and the page, long the untidiest and most awkward thing, like a school dance, feels possible for the writer to orchestrate rather than miraculously survive. The more strikes of lightning you can trigger, the more likely for one to fall into your net and start a bushfire of inspiration. Each morning before any other writing begins, draft a small piece of actionable content in 10 minutes, 150 to 200 words for anything you publish daily, or 10 to 50 words for a book or manifesto. The right mix of dream and routine can produce steady progress. On good days, you can fly out of bed and get 1,000 words written before breakfast. On really great days, thousands more pour out. Such bursts of creativity are the lifeblood of our more formal writing rhythm, fueling our progress in unexpected ways. Write often. Write small. 10.2. Joining writing groups. A further key consideration is the mix of people. You probably don't want to limit the membership to people of the same authorial level or specialty. I think one of the golden rules of belonging to a writer's groups is to share your expertise and experience to help others. Mutual help is a noble group endeavor. You will inevitably all learn from each other, and it is often as valuable to learn what not to do as what to do. The presiding spirit of this group should be encouragement. However, it helps if you are at the same level, for want of a better description, as some of the others. If you cannot share practical tips and lend a helping hand and learn from others, what is the point of going through the various stages of its development? If you feel alone and isolated as you write, you will not get very far. A good writing group is vital to support you in your work. Such a group is not likely to knock on your door and beg you to join it. You will have to go out and recruit the members. This is a really important task and not one to be rushed into. Writing groups can be rather haphazard, depending on the speed at which they form. How many people should you have in a group? This is a good question, and I wish I had an answer for you. 8 is certainly the upper limit, and you might even think that 6 people begin to constitute an unwieldy crowd. 1 or 2 others would be a good number. 10.3. Seeking feedback. If using the services of an editor is an option you're considering, and you haven't used an editorial service before, it's crucial to seek advice and recommendations. People who have published books will have experiences and information to share about every aspect of the process, from hiring professional editors to choosing cover artwork. Seek and heed any information you can gather, from other writers you know, from writers' groups either online or nearby, or people you know who have edited or published books. Above all, keep a healthy perspective regarding the comments and suggestions of professionals. If someone picks the work apart, takes exception to the characters you've established, or suggests you rewrite your plot, the ultimate decision regarding the changes, rewrites, deletions and additions lies with you. It is your book, and you must remain true to its theme and your reason for writing it. Even the best authors need outside help polishing their work, so if you're serious about the next steps, publishing and selling your writing, swallow your pride and seek constructive criticism from fellow writers, aspiring authors, or those who know the craft of writing. Choose pre-readers and editors wisely. Whether we agree with it or not, outside opinions influence and shape our work. It's a necessary step to ensure your manuscript puts its best leg forward once you ask the outside world to critique, review, and ultimately buy it. Overcoming common writing challenges. A third person's perspective. As is often said, you can't be objective when it comes to your own work. This is especially true if what you are working on is a big, hairy, overwhelming project like a book. So, when it comes to writing your book, find someone who knows you well enough, but who can also be objective, someone who is not emotionally involved with the book, who can work through the good and the bad with you. The insight they provide can help keep you motivated and totally on point. And never underestimate the power of a good venting session to help with a monumental writing project. Writer's block. It's the fear of every writer, the words just won't come. Or when they do, they aren't quite what you had in mind. If you find yourself facing writer's block, the best thing to do is start writing words, any words. Freeform words. Words that are totally unrelated to the subject matter you've been sweating over. Anything will do, as long as the words are flowing. This will often get your creative juices moving, and inspire you to get back to work on that chapter you have stalled on. Even if nothing on your designated work in progress is forthcoming, consider the activity a win. When it comes to writing a book, writers face many challenges that can paralyze them, from writer's block to a completely different plot. However, with a game plan in place, these challenges can be easily managed. Here are a few of the most common writing challenges, and some tips for overcoming them. 11.1. Dealing with procrastination. In part 1 of the 3-part How to Write a Book, Your Complete Roadmap, we explored starting a book. This is your checklist for everything you need to know before getting started, from finding inspiration and brainstorming to breaking down the parts of a book. Now that you've got your tools for success, it's time to start putting them to good use. In part 2, we'll focus on writing a book. This is the step-by-step section where we take your book from idea to an actual first draft. We'll explore outlining, drafting and revising. Then in part 3, we'll walk through editing a book. This is the polishing, perfecting and publishing phase. We'll cover beta readers and sensitivity reads, querying, writing your synopsis, editing and finally, getting your book sold. Let's get to writing. Writing a book is a goal for many, but for those who make the leap, the finish line can seem at best far off in the distance and at worst forever outside their grasp. There seems to be a book writing hurdle for every phase of the writing process. One of the most common for writers at every stage of the game is procrastination. Whether you're doing everything in your power not to start, struggling with writing a first draft, or finding reasons to avoid finishing that final polish, there are specific techniques you can employ that will lead you to a completed manuscript, without the vague pit of dread nagging at the back of your mind. 11.2. Handling rejection. And then, be prepared for rejection. It can be crushing, unless you're ready for it and take it in stride. The process of submitting a book proposal can take a lot of time. It's not unheard of for someone to work on the same proposal for years, tailoring it to try and meet a particular publishing house's needs. Just remember that you're not necessarily being rejected as a writer or as a person. It's just the work, and there are many reasons they might not want to publish your book. Keep in mind that the bulk of the sales for writers typically come from a book's advance and royalty, particularly when dealing with a traditional publisher. Be mindful of either creator-controlled advances or back-end deals, so you'll have leverage when negotiating a contract for a title. Be prepared for rejection. That sounds like a downer, but in fact, it's just a practical matter. If you've ever tried to submit work to a magazine, newspaper, or any other publication, you probably received some rejections, right? Everybody does. It just means you wrote a story or article that doesn't match the tastes of that particular publication. The only way to get around this problem is to specialize and focus on publications you know will be interested in your topics. But even writers who specialize often receive rejection letters. With book proposals, the problem is even more difficult. A book proposal is a brief outline of your book, the plot, characters if it's fiction, etc., plus your qualifications for writing it. You typically need to send a proposal to a literary agent or a publisher. You can't just mail the book. After you finish your proposal, research several agents or publishers who specialize in the specific genre or audience your book is written for. Before sending the proposal, read the submission requirements on their website. Most publishing professionals will detail what they'd like sent, and they might even list guidelines for writing a proposal or tapping into a book's market. Follow those guidelines exactly. 11.3. Balancing writing with other responsibilities. Set goals. Everyone has heard of the expression, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time." The same is true for writing a book. Set a realistic word count or time goal for each writing session, and make sure it's attainable. Remember, this is over the course of every day, not necessarily just your dedicated writing days. Set your writing hours. Determining your dedicated daily or weekly writing hours is important. It helps not only to block out time, but also to create an expectation for your cohabitants. You'll also be in the habit of writing, so that when you sit down to work, you're ready for the creative challenge. We've reached the most challenging element of learning how to write a book. Balancing the responsibility of completing a manuscript with other responsibilities in your life, family, a full-time job, extracurricular hobbies, takes sacrifice and strength. Here are some strategies that our students have used to balance writing their books with their everyday commitments. Writing for different genres. There are books that serve as psychics, telling you about yourself and holding up mirrors for you to gaze into and see reflections of yourself. Many of these are children's books. They explain the world, your friends, adults, and even yourself. These are the deep books. They are timeless. I wish you all the best as you traverse your genre. It will be worthwhile to spend 3 weeks of your life in the Madeleine L'Engle, 1 week Peggy Rathman or J.K. Rowling unique otherworld of your book's intentions. Are you ready? Good writing is assured for those who understand the book, and the next 10 weeks rest of everyone who understands him or herself. What is your genre? This is another subject that writers frequently don't think about thoroughly before embarking on the writing journey. Every genre has its own rules. You may not violate these rules if you want to be published. Make sure you read the rest of this book and adjust your decisions according to your genre's dictates. If you don't know yet what your genre is, take a short detour and make that decision. The 7 main genres are memoirs, creative nonfiction, literary nonfiction, how-to-book, innovative unique format novel, and of course the most difficult of all the genres, the mighty children's picture book. 12.1. Fiction writing techniques. The same goal may be applied to the work of any other fiction writer. In this regard, the writing of fiction is pure, artful, difficult, yet exhilarating. Meisner, Burglar, and Master Carpenter alike all appeal to our senses. Each is capable of invoking an emotional response that is specific, local, and concrete. Speaking of Nicholas Pileggi's Mob Cop, a noted reviewer said, "Jerome's book accomplishes that most difficult of tasks, bringing all its subjects to life, and in doing so it brings to life a significant portion of 20th century American social history." Any fiction book should have as one goal, telling the truth. This applies to all writers of fiction. It's likely this is why good fiction transcends national boundaries and speaks to all humankind. After all, human nature is pretty much the same the world over. Fiction writing requires unique and distinctive skills, along with a fertile imagination. The objective of fiction is to create an experience for the reader, to transport him or her to another place or time. What's required to do this? Simple: the convincing rendition of main characters building to a climax that results in change. The fiction writer is an artist. He or she makes facts into art, capturing a moment in time, as well as human actions. To maintain plausibility, the artful writer crafts his narrative in such a way that it doesn't stretch the limits beyond the reader's willingness to suspend disbelief. The work of serious fiction should appeal, no matter how briefly, to all the senses of the human animal. 12.2. Non-fiction writing strategies. Research. It is essential for a non-fiction book to have a strong research base. The more thorough your outline and the more knowledgeable you are about your topic, the easier the research becomes. After you have pretty well figured out what goes into each subchapter and what the key points are, you can then decide which points need further backup from other resources. This will be your guide in researching your material. Use search engines and library databases and grab whatever relevant books, papers, or other publications you can get your hands on. On the way, take notes. Then start writing. Once you have finished your first draft, a big job still lies ahead, making quotations, examples, and analogies fit seamlessly into your text and rewriting your text where necessary. This research-driven approach will make your book as actionable and resourceful as it can be. Use a good non-fiction book structure. Many non-fiction books fail to sell because the authors didn't organize their book in a clear and interesting way. Non-fiction writing strategies. The first step is to get all the ideas for your book out. You don't need to write a chapter at this stage. Instead, list the things that need to be included in the book. Once you have all your ideas down, put them in an order that makes sense and divide it into larger groups. These large groups will be your chapter structure. Then divide each of these into smaller groups, which will be your sub-chapters. When you break the book into these sub-chapters, think about a logical flow for the reader to go through. At first, do this on paper. Then jot down 3 to 5 key points for each subchapter. This is your starting point. You can add more as you research. 12.3. Poetry and creative writing tips. As writing styles go, poetry is definitely one of the trickiest, and it's discussing that poetry's toughest trick is to be able to carry meaning and evoke emotions with as few words as possible. Poetry is kind of like one of those exercise programs masochists paid hipster trainers to put them through these days. Everything you put into your work has to be there for a reason, nothing should be there just to take up space. Each word is a finely sculpted muscle, and each line is one of the client abs that are under the sweatband shirt but hidden from sight. And of course, everything has to be gorgeous about it. It's excruciatingly beautiful to look at, unless someone deliberately made everything grotesquely deformed. When you write poetry, every word you choose is incredibly powerful. If you're feeling that other topics about writing are irrelevant because you are sure you shouldn't be writing anything so formal as a novel, there are still plenty of ways to scratch that unique itch you have, that rare love for words or for a literary form. Some of these less common waters are poetry, short stories, essays or creative non-fiction, or even personal journaling. All of these are writing, and all of them will help to strengthen your storytelling muscles. If calling something like poetic feature or limerick writing will make it easier to get your butt in the writing seat, then by all means, feel free to think of your calling as a variation, and accept, you know, that you have a writing calling. You are a person that needs to tell stories, and something that you do is going to be absolutely wonderful. The editing process. The editing process is a marathon, not a sprint. Take some time off in between drafts. Trust me, opening that manuscript with fresh eyes is always revealing. When you do sit down to work through your next draft, focus on the big picture. Is there a character arc? Are there plot holes? Do you need to rework the ending? Are there ongoing themes? Make the big changes now. Once all the major edits are complete, you can lock focus on the smaller details such as proofreading the book for grammar mistakes and awkward sentences. At this point, you'll also have to write a book synopsis for agents, publishers, if you're seeking traditional publishing, or to provide to review sites or book bloggers, if you're acting as your own marketing team. The hardest step in becoming an author is the first. When you have a completed manuscript, it's much easier to take the next steps, such as finding an agent or self-publishing. But with an incomplete manuscript, the process can stall. By setting a specific completion date, you're more likely to work toward that goal. 13.1. Self-editing tips. 4. Combine your personal editing tips with the rules of grammar. Once you've completed a self-guided or self-teaching session, you'll find that you're able to work on almost any complex document or part of a document in no time. There is also the option, if you manage to edit a chunk in a reasonable amount of time, to apply for freelance proofreading work. These jobs are easy to get, pay well, and provide a fantastic education. Remember, an exhaustive study of proofreading strategies as well as the techniques and intricacies required to manage complex supplies would greatly enhance verbal efficiency. 3. Get rid of as much secondary punctuation as possible, with exclamation marks being at the top of your to-do list. Not only does overusing secondary punctuation make you look like an amateur writer, but it can also be quite distracting. Remove the offending punctuation marks and replace the poor dialogue with something funny, clever, or shocking instead. 2. Fix inconsistencies and discrepancies, such as whole written timelines, before focusing on anything else. This self-editing tip is vital because quick and simple mistakes or logical issues could turn into bigger problems later on. Don't start editing the moment you finish writing. Put the manuscript in a box for at least 2 weeks, and fire up your computer only after taking a long break. After you've written a book, the first step is to perform some basic self-editing. Thanks to a few tips, you can accomplish this all while saving time and energy. 13.2. Working with professional editors. When choosing an editor, consider the level of help you need. Are you a first-time novelist who needs help with everything from grammar to plot? Then hire a full-service editor, also known as a developmental or 3-edit editor. Full-service editors mark up your manuscript as they do their reading, making comments and suggestions. Copy line editors focus on the smaller things like word choice, paragraph flow, and dialogue. With copy editors, expect to get some errors pointed out, paragraphs that are vague, awkward, or incomplete, and inconsistencies in characters, settings, and themes. In addition, you also receive an electronic check for errors in hundreds of styles, which should catch most of what the copy editor missed. Sentence structure, grammar, punctuation, and spelling are some of the things line editors look for in your manuscript. Once you decide which level of help you need, find and hire a good editor well before your book is due to be published. The decision to hire a professional editor is a solid one. Regardless of who is evaluating your work, be it agents, publishers, or the reading public, you want to make a good impression. The mistakes or things that could be better won't be able to get past the eagle eyes of an editor. Extravagantly, the envy of mediocre, mundane, and oftentimes confusing writing. 13.3. Proofreading your manuscript. The author should always do what's called a rule proof. That means read your manuscript word for word, characters and punctuation mark for punctuation mark, rule for rule. You just finished the manuscript, so the story is still fresh in your mind. The best time to take care of proofreading is right after you read the book through the first time. If you wait for weeks or even months, some of your eyes won't be fresh anymore, and your mind might start filling in the correct words instead of reading what is actually on the page. While a professional editor will perform a thorough proofread of your book, you should never send your script without reading through it yourself. Editors are human too, and sometimes errors do get through. Plus, even the best editor in the world is looking at your text with fresh eyes, and they can miss items that a second or third pair of eyes will catch. Proofreading your manuscript requires examining every word and every sentence for grammatical errors, misspelled words, and typos. Legal considerations for authors. The dollar dance of writing is essential preparation for you as an author. It will keep you in the clear when your writing begins to generate money. Below are a few guidelines about the legal side of writing. These guidelines are meant for writers whose primary purpose isn't to become legal experts. The basics of rights are to understand them, secure them when needed, and avoid stomping on them when you're on the consumption end of the equation. Create on your own steam, don't slip into infringing upon someone else's rights. Make sure your publishing contract is in order. Stay mindful of what you're doing as a purchaser. And most importantly, be vigilant when it comes to administering the rights that are yours. Phew. Keep these recommendations close, and you're on your way to avoiding legal roadblocks, and far more importantly, you're on your way to cashing the checks that your writing generates. When you know the law as an author, you're setting yourself up to be ahead of the game when it comes to administering your rights and money. It's vital to know the legal permissions of what you're creating, and that you're not inadvertently spending time and energy on creating something that isn't legally permissible. Conversely, if your goal is to use something that someone else created, you need to know what you can and can't do in order to avoid legal entanglements. Some of the most important laws for writers to be familiar with are intellectual property laws, which include the laws of copyright and trademark, laws pertaining to contracts, fair use, public domain, defamation, and privacy. You most likely won't be an expert after reading this chapter, but you'll have a basic understanding to get yourself prepared for a lifetime of writing. 14.1. Copyright and intellectual property. In real life, people who copy your book don't care if the book is copyrighted or not, or who is the copyright owner. Provided they can get away with it legally, they would still do so. One way is to add the copyright notice you created to your work. This notice is, however, not mandatory to obtain the copyright. Unfortunately, the notice doesn't protect your copyright that much, even if you register it with the Copyright Office. Copyright isn't so much about protecting a copyright, but more about telling people that a work is copyrighted and by whom. Current law requires that all published books have an ISBN, which is your petition to obtain copyright to your work. Copyright on your work is legal in most of the countries of the world. While it will be automatically copyrighted, you can also take measures to protect it. Several days ago, during your research, you also became quite web-savvy about protecting your work and secrets with an eye toward becoming a published author. When you are ready to publish, make use of this savvy and apply innovative web techniques to authenticate your work as yours. Once your book is written and published, you should take steps to protect it from being copied and distributed without your permission. Copyright protects the specific ways authors have expressed their ideas and prevents others from freely using a work without the author's permission. Authors of original work, such as books, automatically have their work copyrighted simply by creating them. 14.2. Contracts and agreements. There are many other matters that are of concern to an aspiring author, such as the contents of the book or articles, the publisher's marketing and publicity commitments, the removal of the title from the publisher, and the use of subsidiary rights, and the obligations and perks to which the author might be entitled, including the provision of free books, author's discount on books already published, contributions to promotional expenses, and preemption rights to which the author is entitled. All of these benefits, which are included in the contract, make law school an attractive proposition, particularly when the benefits are packed with lectures and textbooks that communicate worthwhile knowledge. The publishing contract, sometimes called an author agreement or publishing agreement, is the contract between the publisher and the author by which the writer agrees to produce a specific work within a stipulated period of time. The contract outlines the rights and responsibilities of both parties, and spells out how eventual profits will be shared between the publisher and the writer, who has a choice of agents to represent him. The main features of the commerce-oriented publishing agreement are the nature and scope of the rights granted by the author to the publisher, the method by which income from the published work, in whatever form or media, is to be divided between the publisher and author. 14.3. Understanding royalties. There are two types of royalties: a royalty percentage on hardcover books and a royalty percentage on paperbacks. Just to give you an example, a typical percentage of royalties from a hardcover book is 10% of the first 5,000 copies sold, 12.5% after 5,000 copies, and a typical percentage of royalties from a paperback is 8%. Generally, You can also establish rights to derive income in selling your manuscript. When you sign a contract with a publisher, and in exchange for an advance, you assign only certain rights and for a certain number, in a certain language and for a certain period of time. After, when the publishers regain the assignment of the transferred rights, then you can write a contract with another publishing house for another edition in that language. So don't be afraid, you can write more books even from the same manuscript. The last convoluted topic we need to cover is royalties. This is something you don't have to worry about when thinking about writing your book. However, it's something you need to think about after you've written your book and are considering publishing it. First, how a publisher determines your royalty can be found in their standard book contract. And regardless of what the publisher is and what it contains, you should be aware of the following terms as pointed out by literary agent Nathan Bransford. A. List price, the actual price that the book is listed for. B. Wholesale price, the price bookstores and online retailers pay for the book, usually 50% of the list price. C. Royalties, how you get paid. Building a writing support system. Having non-writers in your life is also wonderful. We spend so much of our time in our own minds. Sometimes it is nice to be with someone who doesn't think about writing as often as we do. It can provide balance. It can also provide you with an escape from writing land. When you come out the other end, often, the writing and story come to life. It is also important to have personal support. It is often difficult, working for years on one project, to keep going. We get down, sink into a pit of despair, and think the worst. Having family and friends to comfort and support us is critical. Keep going. You can do it. There are many writers who look to family and friends to read a first draft to make sure the story arcs make sense, the pacing is good and the characters feel real. Just as with writing contacts, if you are lucky, you will find willing readers who will not only read one book but stay with you as you write many books. Just as you would in the professional world, build a support network around your writing or creative life. Create a group of friends who write and would be happy to check in 1 to 2 times a month. Let them know that you would be happy to check in with them, as well. The purpose is twofold. Not only do you develop accountability and people to share your frustrations, ideas and support, but you also have beta readers at the ready when you are done with your book. There are many writing group options out there: local writing groups, the Meetup app, professional creative support organizations, Facebook groups, blogs and websites for writers and more. Take the time to search and find ones that are good for you. 15.1. Finding beta readers. I find the most effective discussions are one-on-one, within the group. Members share their work, and then we discuss, honestly and constructively, what works and what doesn't. Group members who can participate in a number of these sessions gain a better understanding of the elements of writing and receive more useful feedback because we know each other's work. The group can then engage in broader, more in-depth critiques from a base of familiarity with the author's work. While other group activities can benefit a writer, nothing beats the detailed, well-thought-out input you'll receive from a group committed to your work. You can usually find critique groups in your community or at your college or local schools. Good readers can help you polish your prose before you submit your book for consideration. If you're not familiar with the term beta readers, they are simply part of your target audience that has agreed to read your book before it is printed and sold commercially. Their feedback can be invaluable as you make final revisions before submitting your book to an agent or publisher. You can find beta readers in your writers group, among friends and inside your writing community. Family members who understand and will be honest about your writing are also a good choice. Be sure you deal with them on a professional level, providing your work far enough in advance that they can give your book the necessary time and attention. Make sure they understand what kind of feedback you need so they pay attention to your concerns. 15.2. Joining a writing critique group. Start by becoming familiar with the feedback sandwich. Did something not work? Ask questions about what wasn't working, and create a conversation about it. When other people have the floor, listen intently and never argue about feedback. Remember, they do have a point, and they're attempting to help you improve your book, not tear you down. As we talked about in an earlier section, in order for good feedback, you need to give good feedback. And as important as it is to learn how to critique writing in a way that is supportive, constructive, and helpful, it is equally important to learn how to receive feedback. Extremely important writing tips, especially in your early stages as an author, is that while feedback is invaluable, feedback can also be overwhelming. Even if 5 people give you the same feedback, the way they deliver that feedback will be different, and you have to navigate through the different ways they deliver that feedback. By sharing your writing with a writing critique group, you get to exchange valuable feedback and have conversations about your work with other writers. If you're a non-fiction writer, it helps keep you on track and gives you a group to brainstorm with. If you're a fiction writer, it's a good way to keep tabs on whether or not your book is engaging and your characters are relatable. And for both fiction and non-fiction writers, it gives you a space to discuss what is and isn't working. 15.3. Working with writing coaches. Book writers pay writing coaches all the time. What's the value? Writing well doesn't necessarily come naturally to many book writers. More than anyone else, a coach understands the arduous journey of writing a book. The coach provides encouragement, guidance, and the solid support a writer needs to stay motivated and be more productive throughout this process. Coaching a writer allows the coach to help the writer develop and assimilate professional tips and techniques that exceed the mere collecting of feedback on their own writing. Writing coaches encourage a writer through difficulties and praise progress. They understand the emotions of a writer during the sometimes difficult writing process. That's the value in hiring a writing coach. A coach says, "Let's do it. You can do it," despite everything in the writer's life saying otherwise. A writing coach has some similarities to a developmental editor, but typically a writing coach is not paid to provide services. You might pay for a writing coach who operates as such as a professional. A writing coach is specifically a book writer's cheerleader in times of despair, and a professional who can help a writer work through problems they encounter in the writing process. A coach helps writers overcome blocks and frustrations, satisfy readers with clear writing, and take the writer's craft to the next level. Continuing your writing journey. You'd think that would be that, right? The editor waves her magic red pencil, and the book is done and perfect, ready to be shipped off with our love and kisses. But the editor is no magic fairy, even though she's a lady, and she has a lot in common with Pokey Little Puppy's mom, and there's still more to do. There's copy editing, for example, the nitty-gritty of making sure your manuscript is ready to turn into whatever all your readers are going to be reading. And did you know that proofreading is something different from copy editing? Bet you'd like to know who to thank for setting you straight on that when the process is done. This chapter is here to tell you all about what you need to know. Because it's time to revise your book, and you'll want it perfect now, wouldn't you? 16.1 Editing and revising. There are really only 2 big differences between the simple project you wrote and the professional product you want to sell or share with others. The first is editing, the second revising. You might have noticed that the steps in this book were spelled out, and in a different order from those in earlier chapters. This isn't accidental. A lot of writing time is sitting down and typing out words. Then you look at what you've done, note how and where you could make it stronger or deeper or richer, then go back to your keyboard and work some more. Then you look again. Each cycle is revision, which you guessed it, revising cycle a couple dozen to 50 times on a manuscript, depending on how far you were from your goal the first time around. You may actually spend more time revising than you do writing in the first place. Then, after you've done all the revising you're capable of, it's time to seek out professional help. That would be editing. Now that your book is written, you're ready to start the next stage on your journey. You've become an author, but in a way the journey is only just beginning. What comes next will depend largely on your goals and what kind of book you've written. 16.1. Setting new writing goals. To begin, you could set a goal to start building your writing habit. Then, you could set a goal to outline your novel. Finally, you could set a goal to write your novel draft. Each of these goals has smaller tasks or milestones that will help you get there, so don't feel like you have to tackle everything all at once. While there is no one-size-fits-all solution, there are some general guidelines that can be applied no matter what you'd like to accomplish. Finding the perfect length and balance for your writing goals ultimately depends on the unique circumstances in your life. However you define success, be sure to set your sights on what you'd like to achieve and chart your course. If you have a specific goal in mind, think about your long-term objective and how you can break it down into smaller steps in order to get from here to there. Each of these smaller steps can be a goal that you can work toward. For example, suppose you'd like to write a full-length novel. That's great. However, if you're just starting your writing journey, writing an entire novel might feel a bit overwhelming. That's okay. You can take whatever time you need and break down long-term goals into smaller, more manageable goals. 16.2. Exploring different writing styles. As you continue to explore the writing styles, you should ensure that you also look at different genres. Genres describe styles and stories that writers have to choose from. Some genres are romance, comedy, tragedy, and parody. Along with the different writing genres, the writing world also has different types of audiences. Each audience comes with different expectations, and it is important for you to understand their expectations as they will greatly affect how people view your work. Finally, before you take off on your adventure as a writer, it is important to understand that you can write for a wide variety of reasons. It is also perfectly okay to write just because it makes you happy. As you begin to explore the world of writing, you will realize that there are many styles. Note that how you choose to write should be determined by who you plan to write for, and also what you really want to write about. If you are writing a children's book, your style should be different compared to that of another writer who is writing an academic paper. Some of the writing styles that exist include persuasive, expository, descriptive, narrative, and journals. There are many other styles, and they are all different from each other. 16.3. Attending writing workshops and conferences. While I love writers' conferences, they can be very expensive. Aspiring writers who are not yet working consistently with freelance writes often have to write a pitch to their spouse or a local writers' association to be able to afford these fees. The best way to maximize your investment is to have your elevator pitch, business cards, one sheet, and portfolio in hand. Only go to writing conferences if you have these promotional materials. You are going to be meeting agents, editors, and other highly valuable contacts, so you want to be able to follow up afterward whether or not they were able to take a sample manuscript from you. If you really plan to get the most out of a writing conference, I would suggest setting up as many pitches, appointments, and reading sessions as you can. Realistically, no more than 2 per day. No writers' conference is going to set you up with these contacts, but you can usually coordinate with other conference goers who write and read the same types of work you do. Small groups are less intimidating and more fun for informational, introductory meetings than solo appointments. The cost of pitches varies greatly between conferences. These are valuable, but you will really have to weigh the cost of getting to know and network with an agent or editor. I don't think that aspiring writers should really expect to get a lot out of initial agent-editor conversations. Industry professionals are pros, and amateur writers are not. However, like anything else, the motivation you show in cold emailing and scheduling a physical meeting with a person you have already inquired about tends to be appreciated. I would of course advise that these efforts are met with professional follow-up. Writing conferences and workshops are top-notch networking opportunities for writers. Not only do they allow you to hear from top industry professionals, but they also give you the option to have your work read and critiqued on the spot. Needless to say, this rapid and direct critique is invaluable. Writing conferences are also great places to have casual conversations with industry professionals who are traditionally hard to access, such as literary agents and editors. Because writing workshops are typically smaller, they offer more one-on-one access than large conferences. However, both conferences and workshops provide useful tools for authors to improve their craft and get a crash course in the industry. Conclusion. You did it. You've made it through this guide, and hopefully you've learned some valuable tips and strategies for how to write a book that readers of all types will love. So pat yourself on the back. You might also feel a little overwhelmed. But writing your first book is a marathon, not a sprint. Give yourself the time to work on your book writing goals, and at the same time, remember what Pearl S. Buck once said, "I am never bored anywhere. Being bored isn't about others. It's about feeling a certain way inside yourself. If you're getting bored, then your reader is suffering." And so that Pearl quote really leads us right into the plan for next steps in this process. In the next post, we're going to guide you through 10 steps you can take to take your writing to the next level and eventually get your manuscripts ready for publication. 17.1. Reflecting on your writing journey. So, congratulations. Writing makes you a writer. This is the step where we get introspective. This is the part where we ask ourselves why we write. There's no right or wrong answer here. You write because it makes you happy. Awesome. You write because that's your method of righting a wrong? Cool. This is also the part of the journey where we ask ourselves what we get from the act of writing. Again, no wrong answer. You might write to cement what you've learned. Or you write to escape the everyday. Knowing why you write and what you want to get from it is so powerful. Embrace your whys and what fors. They will guide you through the times when the words seem daunting, the story is stuck, or the rejections come. There are very few sure things when it comes to being a writer. In fact, the only sure thing I know of is that you're a writer if you write. Even if you have a hard time calling yourself a writer, you are a writer. How do I know that? Because you've written something. Maybe it was a grocery list or an email to a friend, but you wrote something, and that qualifies as being a writer. 17.2. Next steps in your author career. Do you want feedback on your book from an expert in the publishing industry? Are you planning to query literary agents and go the traditional publishing route? Do you want to produce your book yourself and have ownership of the entire process? There are many options that exist for the publication of your book, and you don't have to decide today what you want to do. You can continue to focus on your author career and developing as a writer first. There are many next steps and decisions that will be made, but for right now, take some time to celebrate and reflect on your significant achievement. After you finish your book, what comes next? Before you publish your book, congratulations. You wrote an entire book, and that's something to celebrate. Writing and completing a book is an impressive achievement. At the same time, you may feel a sense of sadness or emptiness at finishing your project, which is natural. But your author career is not yet over. It's time to move on to the next steps in the process of becoming an author and publishing your book. The most important steps to decide now are what your goals are for your book and then, which tasks you need to do to accomplish those goals. 17.3. Resources for further learning. Remember that every book has a prologue, introduction, beginning chapters, ending chapters, and a final epilogue or conclusion. What really makes a good book is a proper and well-developed cadence. Where many writers fall down is in trying to develop detail at a level of the familiar. The idea is to speed up the pace of writing, to accomplish the larger picture at less than the detail, not more. Then you return, and through editing and rewriting, accomplish the cleanup of fine points. Your writing will be on the chord, like the heart of a grand concerto that speaks to the soul, without having to detail each of the musical instruments themselves. Go on and write a terrific book. Plan ahead. If you follow a planned writing schedule, you will avoid the most common problem that writers suffer from: procrastination. There is even a proper time to procrastinate. Before you have gathered all the materials, the tools, and the strength of will to start writing, and before you have the outline firmed up, procrastination is okay. But once you understand the story and have the necessary materials and tools of the craft, start writing and continue to do so until you are finished. Take the top 1 to 3 books in your genre and read them each in turn. Keep in mind the model of the top 5 to 10 best-selling books. Read writing books. Your goal is to learn to write much better than those numbers 1 to 3 books, and you will learn from the books that are doing the best at your particular skill set.